Welcome to Bankless, where we explore the frontier of internet money and internet finance. This is how to get started, how to get better, and how to front run the opportunity. This is Ryan Sean Adams. I'm here with David Hoffman, and we're here to help you become more bankless. What's next with Vitalik Buterin? That is the topic today. We're doing this episode in two parts. The focus is what's next in general, and specifically what's next for Ethereum. In part one, which is being released today, we're going through the Ethereum roadmap from a technical perspective. This is the short to medium term. In part two, we touch on the social, the philosophical, some of the deeper questions around the thing that we've built called Ethereum and its impact for the world. That's going to come out on the following Monday. I'm going to give you a teaser of part one before we get into it, and also part two. Part one, that's today's episode. We're going to get Vitalik's reaction on the merge. It took 8 years to get here. How did he feel? We ask him that question. Ethereum also no longer burns energy. What are the green arguments for proof of stake? Vitalik makes them. And is this whole sustainability thing really a big deal? We get into that subject. Why did proof of stake take so long? It's in the back of all of our minds. We ask Vitalik that question as well, and he describes the journey to get here, to the merge, to proof of stake. What's left is another question. We review the entire roadmap from a technical perspective. We also ask about some concerns. Is Vitalik concerned about staking centralization, for instance? Is he concerned about Ethereum's future censorship resistance? That is all in part one. That is what you are about to hear today. In part two, we get into the social and philosophical. We zoom out. We talk about Ethereum holistically. Is it a network state? Is it like a country? Is that what we've created, a whole digital country? Or is it a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization? If it is a DAO, how in general should DAOs be governed? Should we learn from the corporate world and institute some sort of corporate governance policy? Or are there lessons for us from the political science side of things? We ask Vitalik about that. We also end with, which I think is a really interesting topic I've never heard Vitalik cover, what's next in AI, in artificial intelligence? We ask Vitalik to speak about AI. Apparently, he just went on a recent trip to Silicon Valley, talked to some of the foremost experts in the AI field. So we ask him, the basics on everyone's mind. Is AI coming to destroy humanity? Or will there be some peaceful coexistence? Will there be an intersection with crypto? Is it crypto versus AI in a cage match? Crypto representing decentralized interests and AI on the centralized side? Also, this was interesting to me, why Vitalik thinks advanced AI might actually be happening sooner than he previously thought. So we talk about all of those things on what's next. That's in part two. That is coming out the next Monday. David, what were your thoughts in this episode?
Yeah, well done on that intro, by the way. That was the longest intro that we've done on the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, what's next is a really good question. And it's definitely the thing that people are asking the current state of crypto, as there doesn't really seem to be too much on the horizon in terms like a narrative. The inflation narrative is gone. COVID's over. The merge is over with. So what is next? But there's plenty of things that are next on the Ethereum roadmap. So this is an updated review, part one, updated review on the Ethereum roadmap, just to get that resynced and downloaded into your brain. But I really think it's that second part, the episode that's going to come next week, that I think is the more interesting things. And as the world seems to be accelerating, Ryan, like technology seems to be getting faster. I know ARK is down in price, but doesn't mean it's down in thesis. Kathy's word thesis that the future is coming faster than people expect it to. I definitely subscribe to, and I think Vitalik does as well. And that start to be shown in some of his conversations with people outside of the crypto space, like you alluded to in the AI space. All of these things are around the horizon, and so we need to be aware of them, because if you're not seeing them coming at you, they're going to blindside you, and you're not going to be ready for it. And so understanding these conversations is the intersections of crypto and AI. How DAOs operate and how they should be governed, and what is the long-term network state roadmap for Ethereum and what it may become in relation to that. I think if you understand these questions, you are so far ahead of the rest of the world. And so that's the episode that we try to produce here on this week and next week.
I will say in the first part, there's a section where the terms get a little esoteric and technical for you. That's where we go through the roadmap with the merge, the splurge, the purge, the verge, etc., etc. You'll hear it when we get to that part. There is another episode that we did with Vitalik going through this entire roadmap more in layman's terms, and we'll refer to that. There'll be a link in the show notes for that. Some terms like DVT, which we didn't define, or SSV. This is distributed validator technology, shared secret validators. This is about decentralizing the validator network. Of course, we've also done episodes entirely on this EIP. That's an Ethereum improvement proposal called 4844, which is basic sharding. Proto-dank sharding. So this scales up the transactions per second on rollups that Ethereum can support. One last thing for you premium subscribers, a special gift. We've actually released both part 1 and part 2 today for you. So you don't have to wait. It's all available on the premium feed. You also will have raw access to the debrief, where David and I give our thoughts on the Vitalik show. These are our unfiltered thoughts on the episode that was. And there's a link in the show notes. If you have not gone premium, upgraded your membership from free to premium, you can go do that and get access to the full episode now. Well, without further ado, our episode with Vitalik Buterin. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Rocket Pool is your friendly, decentralized Ethereum staking protocol. You can stake your ETH with Rocket Pool and get our ETH in return, allowing you to stake your ETH and use it in DeFi at the same time. You can get 4% on your ETH by staking it with Rocket Pool, but you can get even more by running a node. Rocket Pool is the only staking provider that allows anyone to permissionlessly join their network of validating nodes. Running a Rocket Pool node is easier to set up than running a solo node, and you only need 16 ETH to get started. Why would you do this? You get an extra 15% staking commission on the pooled ETH, so your APY is boosted. So if you're bullish ETH staking, you can increase your APY and get some extra tokens by adding your node to the decentralized Rocket Pool network, which currently has over 1,000 independent validators. It's yield farming, but with Ethereum nodes. You can get started at rocketpool.net and also join the Rocket Pool community in their Discord. You can find me hanging out there sometimes in the chat, so I'll see you there. Lens Protocol is an open source tech stack for building decentralized social media applications. It is the new era for social media. We all have toxic relationships with our Web2 apps. We want to break up with them, but we can't. These applications own our digital lives and all the relationships that we've made. We need to break through to a new paradigm of social networking applications that we control rather than them controlling us. Lens isn't a social media app, it's a protocol to let 1,000 Web3 social apps bloom. Lens is a permissionless and transparent social graph that is owned by the user. In crypto, we say not your keys, not your crypto, and on Lens, we say not your keys, not your profile. With Lens, your followers go with you to whatever social media application you want to use. And instead of being trapped by an algorithm chosen by that app, Lens lets you choose the way you want to experience your social media. Lens is the last social media handle that you'll ever need to create. So in order to get started, there is a secret code word in the show notes. Enter that code word in the Google form linked, and you'll be well on your way to entering the world of Web3 social. Juno is bringing crypto-friendly banking straight into your checking account. With Juno, you can send money from your Juno checking account straight onto a layer 2, like Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, and they have ZK Sync and Starknet support on their way. You can skip the ACH wait times, you can skip all the gas fees, and go straight from your checking account to an Ethereum layer 2 in seconds. Inside Juno, you can buy and sell crypto with $0 fees, and your Juno checking account comes with a metal MasterCard that gives you up to 5% cash back on your spending. Juno is also giving you $10 cash back on your first crypto deposit and $100 when you set up a direct deposit. This ad just writes itself, so go sign up at juno.finance/bankless.
Bankless Nation want to introduce you yet again to Vitalik Buterin. He is a crypto economic researcher. He's a builder. He is a philosopher. This is the first time he is appearing on Bankless in a post-merge world. He also has this fantastic blog on his website you got to check out. I read whenever an article is published at vitalik.ca. And there's a book out called Proof of Stake, which is a compilation of many of those blog posts. It just came out earlier this month. He also happens to be the guy who wrote the Ethereum white paper. Vitalik, welcome to Bankless, post proof of work, post merge. How you doing?
Great. I'm, obviously, we're really happy that this big, long 8-year journey is finally at its completion. Really happy that proof of stake is here and it's fully here. It's running. It's actually powering the Ethereum chain. The whole transition seems to have happened even far more smoothly than pretty much anyone, including myself, expected. And just happy that that whole chapter and the chapter of all of the various trolls on the Twitter doubting whether or not proof of stake is even possible is over, and the Ethereum ecosystem now gets to move over and start focusing full speed ahead on the next thing.
Yeah, so what are the trolls going to focus on after the merge is done? Now that we have proof of stake, because they're not gonna just wave the right flag, right? They're gonna move on to the next thing.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think if I was a troll, I would probably be waving one of two flags. So, like, one of the flags you can wave is obviously that proof of stake is actually bad, and the other flag you could wave is that sharding will never happen, right? And if you want to wave the flag of sharding never happening, then there are arguments that you could make about how, like, the peer-to-peer networking of data availability sampling is actually complicated, and that stuff is not going to happen, and actually Ethereum's going to hit scalability bottlenecks soon, and blah 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 blah. But like, betting against the Ethereum ecosystem's ability to produce technology is something that clearly does not have a very good track record. So I think, if I was a troll, I would definitely kind of stick to the ideological side and just try to argue that proof of stake is bad somehow.
Vitalik, you said that the merge was even smoother than you expected. So I'm wondering if you could just like put us into the mind of Vitalik as we were going through the merge, because this has been, I mean, the Beacon chain launched, of course, in December of 2020, but proof of stake as an idea has been along even longer than that, and efforts on the Beacon chain has been, started before the Beacon chain launched, of course. So this has been a long time coming. So how does it feel to be in the post-merge world, and what was it like to be watching this thing go through? And also, what was it like to be watching the world watch Ethereum in this moment?
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why we're all surprised that the merge went really well is that none of the testnet merges really quite went that amazingly smoothly, right? Like the most recent merge before the real one, I think it was think the Ropsten merge. It even did not finalize for about an hour because slightly more than a third of all of the nodes did not make it through the transition, and there was some code glitch and they had to update. One of the merges before, like, it only had something like 80% online. Like, there was always some client combination that just did not survive the transition. And there were various bugs. I think one of the reasons why that ended up not carrying over to the mainnet, and the mainnet ended up going great, actually, is that a lot of the bugs were not really bugs with the implementation, they were bugs with the settings, right? As like test nets, they all tend to have, various weird and like settings choices, and people are just less used to connecting into test nets and making sure they're connected in the right way than they are with the main network. And so we ended up having a lot of bugs on that side. But if you're just watching as a more naive observer from further away, you might think like, oh, every one of these testnet merges had at least a bit of an issue. And surely the main one is going to have even more problems just because it's a much bigger ecosystem, and it's all of these thousands of people, and we don't have as good an ability to immediately reach everyone. But no, and actually the mainnet merge just went incredibly smoothly. So I mean, the process of waiting for the merge to happen, it was in some ways surprisingly uneventful. Like there was a call, there was a Zoom call, and everyone was, or at least lots of people were on that call, and I'm sure lots of people were on other calls as well. And we were just talking about what the merge is, talking about what the merge means for the world. And then after we got through a few speeches, it's like, oh, wait, okay, now we're less than 5 minutes away. And then everyone just started waiting for the countdown. And eventually, the total terminal, the terminal block, which is the block that surpasses the total terminal difficulty, was hit. So that's the block that like surpassed the threshold for basically how many hashes the proof of work chain is supposed to do before it turns off. And that was hit, and then immediately after that, the first proof of stake block happened, and everyone celebrated, and then we waited 12 minutes for it to finalize, and then we finalized, and then everyone celebrated again, and like that was basically it. Mm.
Let's
Makes
really
it sound so simple.
yeah, easy, right? We should have done this years ago. but Vitalik, to David's kind of second question, part of I think the interest from the Ethereum community is watching the world react to the merge, right? And you were mentioning the trolls earlier, and if you were a troll, what you'd do is probably like argue that proof of stake is a bad idea entirely. As I was like looking at the world's reaction, there was one thing that kept popping up in mainstream media, and that was this energy reduction narrative, this decrease in electricity cost. And I do think that trolls, at least from a mainstream perspective, right, are going to have a hard time arguing with mainstream that proof of work is superior to proof of stake from a green perspective, from a climate change perspective. But what's your take on this? The whole ETH energy reduction thing. Do you think that is overrated? Do you think that it's underrated? How much does this actually matter in the scheme of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of levels at which you can look at that question. One is the object level issue of like how important the climate issue is and how big of an impact the switch to proof of stake is on the climate, right? So I think my view on the climate issue is kind of fairly boring and moderate, which is like it's not a literal existential risk in the sense that it's not going to kill anywhere close to the number of people that like something like World War III would, but at the same time it's like a really crappy and terrible thing. And if you look at the studies of what worst case global warming could lead to, it's like reducing the GDP of some of the already poorest countries in the world by like a factor of 2 or 3, right? So it's quite a big deal as far as big deals that actually exist in the world are concerned. And I think anything that we can do to try to move beyond our carbon-heavy present is definitely a good thing. And I mean, obviously, there are all these arguments that proof-of-work proponents like to trot out that, like, oh, actually, this is incentivizing green energy production, or actually, this is using energy that would not be used for other purposes because proof-of-work is really good at like finding the energy that would not be useful anywhere else. But no, generally, when I look at those arguments from far away, they always have this kind of feeling of self-serving bias. It's like, it just feels like the algorithm that these people are running is like, not like, oh, let me neutrally figure out whether or not proof of work is good or bad. It's like, oh, let me, try my best to come up with arguments for, as, like soldiers in this rhetorical war of, and, like help me justify the cause I already decided long ago I stand for. But,
You're saying it's a convenient rationale. It's like, oh, it's really convenient that proof of work people think that proof of work is green.
Totally. Like it's the arguments to me feel like, imagine if someone from Philip Morris came to you and said like, hey, Philip Morris is actually an incredibly ethical company because we're contributing to the incentive to cure lung cancer. Right. Like this is basically what happened.
Slow clap.
Yeah. And then, there's all of these like methane, like flaring things. And I think the challenge with them is that like you can always identify, like these really specific situations where there's something really unusual about the energy market. But like the more you zoom out and like think about this in the long game, it's like, no, if you consume energy, then that increases energy consumption, and energy consumption for the next while is going to contribute to climate issues. And, there are going to be like these little discrepancies in both directions, but the little discrepancies over time, they're just going to, I think, average out. But just like the one big fact in the center of it is the thing that's going to dominate. So I think, like, people argue that, proof of work is like good at sort of grabbing those little nooks of energy that nothing else is, because proof of work has this special property that you can do it from anywhere. But at the same time, proof of work has this property that if you want to make good use of your hardware, you have to keep it running 24/7, right? Like this concept of, oh, I'm going to only turn on my hardware at those specific times when there is spare electricity, and otherwise I'm going to shut it off. Like that's total BS, right? Just because like the hardware cost is a big portion of all proof of work cost. And so if you want to be competitive, you have to use your machine and you have to make good use of your machine until Moore's law causes that machine to expire and requires you to replace it with a better machine. In general, I guess, on the whole, not convinced by any of that. And I think, reducing energy consumption is good and great. And I'm immensely glad that we as an ecosystem have done it. So that's the first level of the question, right? The second level of the question is, I guess, from a kind of more selfish Ethereum ecosystem point of view, like, obviously, the fact that we're not contributing to breaking the environment anymore is good for Ethereum from a narrative perspective. And I think there are lots of signs that this is actually true. Like, I've personally talked to a bunch of people in, corporate and government contexts and just lots of different places that are like, hey, we want to do blockchain stuff, but there's just too many people within our organization that or really don't want to be contributing to, making the planet blow up. And, if the merge completes, then like a lot of them have even said, like, I'll be much more excited about using Ethereum. And I think a lot of that's true. I think the subconscious line of thinking that at least some of these people that I'm kind of dismissively referring to as trolls is trying to make is like, oh, this environment thing is like a centralized World Economic Forum ideology. And chances are, if you're into that stuff, then you're into centralized World Economic Forum stuff generally. And so, like, most of people who care about that are going to also care about, making sure we have global financial surveillance because they think that's the only way to prevent crime or whatever. And so why are you even trying to go after those people? And so, the people that crypto should be going after are like these sort of steely-based people who understands that like that centralized World Economic Forum ideology is total crap, and like actually the environment's going to be fine, and like methane is great for the environment, and everything's going to be solar within 5 years anyway. And so that, like, I think there's this sort of implied subconscious viewpoints that really there's just two kinds of people, one or the other, and the World Economic Forum bug eaters are a lost cause, and so you might as well go after the based cool people, and the based cool people don't really care about the environment, and so you might as well use proof of work. But I feel like that viewpoint is just false. Like, I've just been, I don't know, I've talked to lots of people. I've been to like 53 countries now, and chatted with all kinds of people in various industries and governments, and like, I don't think it's true that like there's this binary, and I think there's plenty of people that like really do deeply believe in the the freedom thing and the open source thing and the decentralized like censorship resistant global neutral platform thing, but like also do care about like not blowing up the planet at the same time. And like, I feel like the Ethereum community in general is probably sort of more on average, tilted toward that middle, though there's definitely people on all sides of the spectrum. So, I mean, it sort of ties into the social and cultural bet that I think Ethereum is making, that some of those kind of hardcore proof of work proponents are taking the opposite side of the bet. So, I'm happy with the side of the bet I've made, and I plan to keep making it. So, we'll see.
By the way, for YouTube viewers, the reason David and I have a smile on our face is because we just noticed Vitalik's login name is Adam Back, which is maybe one of the CEOs of the Philip Morris's fighting for proof of work. But Vitalik, can I ask you, is it material? Like, is the difference between Ethereum switching from proof of work to proof of stake, does that have an actual material impact? I think you tweeted out a Justin Drake figure, and I'm not sure where he got this number, where he sourced it, something like a 0.2% reduction on worldwide electricity consumption, which feels very material. What kind of numbers have you seen? And are these actually material numbers, or do you think it was like much ado about nothing all along?
I mean, the 0.2% figure definitely roughly lines up with other statistics that I've seen, right? Like, we've seen statistics that, like, Ethereum mining uses about as much electricity as, I think it was either half of Singapore sometimes or Austria sometimes. And, like, those countries are about 0.1% of the world population, but they're a wealthy 0.1%. So I think if you just look at all those different estimates, like somewhere vaguely in the 0.2% range does make sense. I mean, the one argument that I have seen people make is that, like, oh, that hash power is not going away, it's just going to go to Ethereum Classic. And that's clearly true to some extent in the short term, but that just obviously can't be true in the medium or long term, right? Like, in the medium or long term, like, we've basically reduced the amount of um, reward that gets paid out to people who participate in, like, GPU style proof of work by probably a factor of 10, right? And so in the medium and long term, the amount of effort going into that style of proof of work is also going to go down by a factor of 10.
Yeah, we've certainly reduced the incentive. Therefore, it should follow that there will be less miners in the future. We were talking to Danny, Ryan, and Tim Bako yesterday on the live stream, and Danny gave out this metric that I want to run by you, where yes, we killed 0.2% of global electricity consumption, but he said that if Ether price went 10x, then it would have actually have been 2%. And I'm wondering if that's how the math checks out. And so, like, really, it's like, yes, we killed it at 0.2%. But if we believe that Ethereum is going to be the global settlement layer of the future of everything, then the future energy consumption that we eliminated is actually much more significant and is actually the bigger story. I'm wondering if that math checks out and what you think about that.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with that. I mean, obviously all depends on your projections for just how big the Ethereum and crypto thing is going to get. But in the bull cases where Ethereum keeps becoming a more and more significant thing, then yeah, absolutely, it's a much bigger savings than 0.2%.
Mm-hmm. Vitalik, like we alluded to earlier, the road to proof of stake has been long and winding, with a few dead ends, a few backtracks, and then moving forward to where we ultimately got here today. But for the listeners that came in during the 2021 bull market or later in 2022, they might not know why Ethereum proof of stake took so long. So I'm wondering if you can kind of just, for the listeners that weren't here in the eras of 2017 to 2020, kind of give a recap to the journey thus far. Like, why did proof of stakes take so long, and what were the dead ends and the roads that we almost went down? What were some of those that path like?
Yeah, I mean, so the roadmap, like, really did change a huge amount over the last few years, right? Like, in the 2017 to the beginning of 2018, there was this whole Casper FFG concept where we would basically build the proof of stake system as a smart contract on top of the proof of work chain. And then step one would be to kind of get that running, and then step two would be to have this kind of separate sharding chain, and then we would really slowly migrate the thing. And then before 2017, the roadmap was something even more different. It's like, hey, let's start a new chain from scratch, and then basically just completely retire the existing one and demand all of the applications to actively move over. And then in the middle of 2018, Justin Drake made this post on pragmatic PLS aggregation, where he argued that the Ethereum blockchain should make really heavy use of BLS aggregation in order to support as many validators as possible and be able to be a more decentralized chain. And that, I think, ended up being a really prescient decision, ended up really simplifying the architecture and helping us a lot. But one of the consequences of that meant that we would not be able to actually build the thing as a smart contract, and instead it would make much more sense to build a new chain and then find some way to, like, migrate the Ethereum system over to it over time. And so work on the beacon chain started. Now, then simultaneously, there was this parallel track of working on different ways of how to transition existing Ethereum into the beacon chain, right? So in 2018 to 19, there was this concept of execution environments where it's like you can think of them as being sort of like roll-ups, except much more enshrined, and where the chain would not just provide data, it would also provide a minimal execution layer. And the idea is that the existing Ethereum system would become one of those roll-ups. I think back then we were also really contemplating trying to upgrade from the EVM to WebAssembly, and that's one of those things that we ended up dropping over time, right? Like, one of the unfortunate things that I think was necessary as part of the merge was that there were a lot of dreams that kind of got dropped, and the ambition did end up decreasing a bit. So the desire to improve the VM ended up kind of dropping off, and part of that was definitely just us noticing that out of all of the ETH killers, the only ones that really had significant success were the ones that just accepted the EVM, and the ones that tried to argue that, oh, the EVM is total crap and we'll replace it with something much more performant and better. Like, those, maybe with the exception of Solana, ended up kind of falling off mostly. There's obviously the question of like just how many other things we could use the merge as an opportunity to reform, and I think we did manage to reform some things, but a lot of other things did manage to like basically stay as they are. I mean, like right now, the Ethereum clients are still processing the pre-merge chain, right? And there was a desire, I think, to use the merge as a reset opportunity and allow Ethereum clients to not have to process that history. And I think that still will happen with EIP 4444, but that's something that we're going to have to wait a bit longer for. So there's just a lot of these little things on which the ambition of the project decreased a bit, but it slowly turned into a more and more realistic thing. And then, finally we settled on a design, and we even settled on a very simplified design for the merge, and then we went for it.
And the design that we finally settled on, the one that we know of today, which is now current Ethereum, do you think if we had like waited and like thought about it more and done some more research, we would have found a different design? Or do you feel like the design that we settled on is like the final logical conclusion of Ethereum proof of stake?
So there's two questions there, I think. One is, what is the better long-term form of proof of stake? And the other is, if the research team and only the research team had 500 years to spin its wheels, could it have come up with a better way of managing the transition? So for the first question, I think the answer is like, no, we are currently very far from what a truly optimal Ethereum proof of stake would look like, right? And, recently we've been having these discussions about single slot finality, which is just a big redesign of the consensus. There's all of these designs around like Merkle trees and different ways to implement sharding, and different ways to implement deposit and withdrawal logic and all of this stuff. So still a lot of improvement work to go, and I think we do still have the opportunity to keep working hard over the next few years to make that improvement actually happen. But then on the question of was the merge as it was done the best way to do the transition, I would say maybe yes, maybe no, right? So I think if I could like give myself a research time capsule back to 2014, I probably would have said, don't bother with the Casper FFG design and instead implement a simpler version of chain-based proof of stake first, and so that you can move to that in like maybe around 2018, and then like properly improve proof of stake later on a more relaxed schedule. Where like I do think that we set ourselves goals that were a little bit too high for the proof of stake that we moved to for the first round, and we even ended up not accomplishing some of those goals, right? Like there's a lot of these security issues that arose from the specific design of the Casper FFG system in the way that the LMD Ghost and Fork Choice side and the BFT consensus side like interact with each other. And that's one of the bigger things that we're going to have to resolve with a single slot finality change. So yeah, basically I think create a simpler and less powerful proof of stake and move to it earlier would have been one of the bigger changes that I would have made. But the format of the merge, I think, was excellent. Like, I still don't think that there's a better merge format that we could have come up with, and I definitely hope that other chains like Zcash and Dogecoin are probably two proof of work chains whose core dev communities I talk to a lot and I'm pretty friendly with. Like, I hope they learn from the merge and they move over to proof of stake over the next 4 years or so.
So, Vitalik, if you could go back in time, it sounds like one thing you might change is you would have simplified the proof of stake kind of conception and maybe got it in the roadmap a little bit earlier, deployed it a little bit earlier. I mean, as you mentioned, we're here now, and that's fantastic. But we did have some false starts and some meanderings along the way. And I think for everybody involved, it took longer than we thought. I mean, 8 years. And proof of stake had been in the Ethereum social contract from the beginning. Yet there was also a benefit. And maybe that benefit came in the form of like proof of work distribution, right? So more ETH stake was distributed over a greater number of entities, I guess we would assume or suppose with proof of work distribution. And so that was a benefit. I mean, overall, is there anything else big that you would go back and change, or are you satisfied with how this turned out?
I mean, definitely, had we known the results of the meanderings, it would have been great if we could just skip to the result immediately, right? So the design of the proof of stake system and all of the choices of like, should it be a chain or a smart contract or something else is one side of it. The other side of it is the layer 2 scaling roadmap. Like, I think Optimism and Arbitrum could have been finished and fully trustless by now had we known from the start that rollups are the way to go. And, we had not spent as many resources kind of going down the state channels and plasma rabbit holes. Like, I think going down those rabbit holes was useful from the point of view of like inventing 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And I do think that state channels make a lot of sense in some specific use cases, but I definitely think that we made a false step in like at first really hoping that that would be the way that Ethereum applications would scale in general. And then with Plasma, like there was this hope that we could find some way to generalize it, but that ended up just not working. And then 2 years later, I think we ended up learning that like, well, actually pretty much nobody wants a scaled Ethereum that's just a payment system. Everyone who's in Ethereum already wants something general purpose. And so there's no point in making even a rollup unless it's a general purpose one.
Mm-hmm. Vitalik, we use this going west metaphor. We're on a journey into the frontier. There's a dark fog of war ahead of us, but some of the guests on the podcast are people that have scouted into the unknown and come back to tell us what's in the future. And so as somebody who knows the history of Ethereum very, very well, and also understands cryptography and crypto economics very, very well, can you place us in history or on a map or a journey of where we are going and where Ethereum is? I remember you saying something along the lines of post proof of stake Ethereum is about 55% completed. Could you talk about where are we in Ethereum's trajectory and where are we in crypto's relevancy to the world?
Sure. So I think one way of looking at it from a trajectory of the protocol point of view was to look at the roadmap from last year and basically ask how much progress has been made, right? So let me just Google this now and let's check Ethereum roadmap on Google Images, and I'm sure it'll be up there. There it is. Click.
And as you're talking, Vitalik, we'll be viewing this on YouTube so we can see. And you're referring to the merge, surge, verge, purge, splurge roadmap.
There it is. So if we want, just looking at the 5 tracks, right? We can go through the tracks one by one. So the merge is completed now. The things in the merge section that are not completed are. One is the post-merge hard fork with withdrawals, right? That's obviously the one of the next big priorities right after the merge. It's a pretty simple hard fork, and we basically know what to do. There's a spec. I think the main debate at this point is to do it at the same time as 4844 or do it earlier and then do 4844 a bit later. But otherwise, it's like we're not far from it. Distributed validators, I think, still progressing. Actually, haven't checked up on that team for a while, but I imagine they've made quite a bit of progress, though it's not quite 100% done yet.
Is
And
that
then if we look at
DVT from Obel? Is that what that is?
yes, it's
Okay.
DVT, aka SSV.
SSV, right. Cool.
Yeah. Right. So, and then if we look in the longer term extras, single secret leader election, there's been some great work on the cryptography there. The cryptography itself has been published. Single SWOT confirmations, or what we now call single SWOT finality, that's a bigger item, and I think it's an item that has been really moved earlier in the roadmap because people just recognize the value and the importance of it much more. And I think this is one of those things that we are going to have to kind of have a big public discussion with the community at some point, because there are huge benefits to single SWOT finality, but at the same time, there are some costs. So, like, for example, some compromises either to the 32 ETH validator balance property or to the level of economic finality that we can expect, and just like different trade-offs of what kinds of things would have to be sacrificed if we want to be able to actually like have finality in, like, say 32 seconds or something like that. And then better signature aggregation is just a subset of single SWOT finality at this point. So that's the merge. Basically, the entire left half of that box is finished, and the right half of the box is still to go, which is great. The surge. So there, I think things have obviously been reshuffled a bit, right? So back then there was the whole 4488 versus 4844 stuff, and I think lately 4844 has been winning, and it's basically fully specified. It's just waiting in implementation, and so that would be, I would call 4844 the equivalent of basic sharding. Though I think one of the interesting things with dank sharding, which happened after this roadmap, is that dank sharding really moved us away from the concept of having discrete shards, like shards as individual units. Instead, we're just moving to this more amorphous concept of, like, there's these big data blobs, and there is a distributed procedure for verifying the data blobs, but otherwise there's just blobs, and there isn't like a hard point where one section of a blob ends and another section of a blob begins. So I would say there, I would say, the short-term cold data expansion box got short-circuited a bit. The basic sharding box, that green bar is probably a bit further, and then the basic sharding and data availability sampling, like, that's a really big research area. So it's still quite a bit of stuff left to go. Then the Verge, Verkle trees. That one is interesting in that I think there's been a lot of progress on implementing Verkle trees. The main sticking point at this point is that the transition from our existing tree structure to a Verkle tree is going to be something that's like a big engineering challenge to implement, and there's still debates about how to do it. And I think in general, it's been deprioritized a little bit relative to getting scalability out, because scalability is just, like, so incredibly important and core to Ethereum. The Purge is so history expiry EIP 4444, making some good progress. Banning self-destruct, I think at some point we just have to pull the trigger and say we're going to do it. State expiry has been deprioritized a lot because of proposer-builder separation. Like, basically, if you have PBS and you have statelessness, then the number of actors that actually have to hold the entire state is really tiny, right? Regular validators don't have to hold the state because regular validators would just have to verify other people's blocks. They're not creating their own blocks. And so that's something that where the order of operations also got reworked a bit, right? But which is a good thing. Like, I think state expiry being deprioritized does give us a lot of freedom to figure out all the other stuff first. And then all of these other things about just like making the Ethereum protocol cleaner and like getting rid of RLP, cleaning up the block structure. Like, there's people who, like, I think wants to do them, but they're kind of low priority. And I think Ethereum is going to be in a place where it's able to do these these sort of more aesthetic things that just have to do with making the protocol simpler and look cleaner, but probably would need another like a year or so of firefighting, right? Like, this is one of the big changes that's going to happen with Ethereum protocol development over the next 5 years, which is really moving away from firefighting mode and moving from, we got to get this fast. The community's angry at us. People really want this stuff now, to this kind of more calmer a trajectory of, like really valuing stability and sustainability. And I think the merge already like really reduces the pressure on the Ethereum ecosystem a lot. But I think a successful transition, at least to proto dank sharding, is going to be the rest of the way. And then, full dank sharding can happen on its own time. Cleanups can happen on their own time. Virtual trees can happen on their own time. And so that, the pressure on the ecosystem to do those things quickly can at least be a bit lower. And then the splurge, so
Vitalik,
EVM,
before we get to the splurge, can we just kind of summarize for folks? And I'll remind Bankless listeners that we did an entire episode on the Ethereum roadmap where we went through the merge, surge, verge, purge, and splurge in extreme detail. So make sure you catch that episode. But high level here, the functions of these various categories, the merge is about transitioning to proof of stake. And that's pretty much done. There are a few things to tie off, but we're getting real close. It's almost done. The surge is about scalability of the Ethereum network, Ethereum economy, in the form primarily of roll-up scalability. And the big functionality to watch there is the proto dank sharding EIP 4844. Did I get the EIP right? 4844? No, sorry. The EIP 4844 for proto dank sharding, which is maybe upcoming. Don't know when yet, but that's the surge. And then the verge is about statelessness, and that helps us further decentralize the network, allow individuals to run nodes. And so does the purge. It eliminates some of the technical debt, allows us to run nodes better. And when we have the merge, the surge, the verge, and the purge, that's kind of the base functionality. And I wanted to just pause there and reiterate that before we get to the splurge, because it feels like the splurge, that's the goodie bag. Those are all of the extra things that we'd like to implement. But the core of this thing from a roadmap perspective is probably the first 4 categories. Is that, approximately right? Is that in the ballpark, Vitalik?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that like one connotation that it's important to get away from is the connotation that the splurge is, or anything in the splurge bucket is less important than the other 4. I think, the individual items are smaller, but a lot of them are quite valuable. So like, for example, account abstraction is very valuable. PBS, or some kind of like stabilization of the MEV situation, is obviously super valuable. And with the discussion of censorship resistance, it becomes even more important. EVM improvements are that's a smaller one, but like EVM big int arithmetic, it can be a big deal. Basically, let us do a lot more cryptography inside of the EVM and probably get half the benefits of what we wanted to do with WASM back in the day. ZK snarking everything is like actually a really big deal. So like, I think if I had to choose between giving up the Verge and giving up ZK snarks, I would probably give up on the Verge.
Wow.
Like one of the reasons why is because like ZK snarks could give us a sort of poor man's Verge, where basically we don't bother with Virtual trees and we solve the witness size problem by snarking the witness instead. And now that approach, like, it's very ugly. It has a lot of weaknesses. It'll require a far larger amount of like work for the Stark provers than would otherwise be necessary. But like it at least kind of works and gets us the objective. And snarking in general is just incredibly valuable for making it easier for people to verify stuff on chain. But that's something that yes, that's something that's really valuable. Like ZK snarks are, I think I've said this before, in my opinion, they're as big yet and as important a technological breakthrough as blockchains are. And we're
wow.
gonna start seeing them more and more over the course of this decade. But it's still would take a while until the technology gets to full maturity. So fingers crossed and hoping that it just keeps on progressing peacefully, and we'll see.
The Brave browser is the user-first browser for the Web3 internet, with over 60 million monthly active users. And inside the Brave browser, you'll find the Brave wallet, the secure multi-chain crypto wallet built right into the browser. Web3 is freedom from big tech and Wall Street, more control and better privacy, but there's a weak point in Web3, your crypto wallet. And most crypto wallets are browser extensions, which can easily be spoofed. But the Brave wallet is different. No extensions are required, which gives Brave browser an extra level of security versus other wallets. Brave wallet is your secure passport for the possibilities of Web3, and supports multiple chains, including Ethereum and Solana. You can even buy crypto directly inside the wallet with Ramp. And of course, you can store, send, and swap your crypto assets, manage your NFTs, and connect to other wallets and DeFi apps. So whether you're new to crypto or you're a seasoned pro, it's time to ditch those risky extensions, and it's time to switch to the Brave wallet. Download Brave at brave.com/bankless and click the wallet icon to get started. Arbitrum is an Ethereum Layer 2 scaling solution that is going to completely change how we use DeFi and NFTs. Some of the coolest new NFT collections have chosen Arbitrum as their home, while DeFi protocols continue to see increased liquidity and usage. You can now bridge straight into Arbitrum from more than 10 different exchanges, including Binance, FTX, Huobi, and Crypto.com. Once on Arbitrum, you'll enjoy fast transactions with cheap fees, allowing you to explore new frontiers of the crypto universe. New to Arbitrum, for a limited time, you can get Arbitrum NFTs designed by the famous artists Ratwell and Sugoi for joining the Arbitrum Odyssey. The Odyssey is an 8-week-long event where you complete on-chain activities and receive a free NFT as a reward. Find out more by visiting the Discord at discord.gg/Arbitrum. You can also bridge your assets to Arbitrum at bridge.arbitrum.io and access all of Arbitrum's apps at portal.arbitrum.one in order to experience DeFi and NFTs the way it was always meant to be: fast, cheap, secure, and friction-free. ZK Sync is an Ethereum Layer 2 network that is pushing the frontier of high-performance blockchains that don't compromise on security or decentralization. ZK Sync has combined the power of zero-knowledge rollups and the Ethereum virtual machine, enabling developers to build the greatest Web3 projects possible, ones we haven't even seen yet. Crypto needs its killer applications to onboard the world, but crypto killer apps need ZK Sync as a platform to build on first. It's generally accepted that zero-knowledge rollups are the conclusion of crypto blockchain scaling technology, and ZK Sync is leading the charge into the final frontier of crypto economics. So if you're a developer who wants to build your app on a future-proof foundation, which gives your users the best UX possible, check out ZK Sync's website at zksync.io. And yes, there's also going to be a token, so give them a follow on Twitter too, at ZKSync.
So that is the roadmap progress graphic, and we've looked at that kind of lens on what Ethereum looks like next, what Ethereum looks like moving forward. There are a few other lenses we might want to put on this topic and this question, Vitalik, before we tie it off. One is the economics, maybe the economics of staking. Are they now set in stone, the economics of Ethereum, or are they scheduled to change at some point? What sort of changes might you envision?
Mm-hmm. That's definitely a good and very important question. So changes to the economics of staking that I could see happening. One of them might be that I think there are ways to make the deposit and withdrawal queues faster, at least in the normal case. So things like allow a huge amount of deposits and withdrawals to happen if the chain finalizes. So that'll just make the experience for validators easier. And that'll also reduce the incentive to participate in stake pools, and it'll make it easier to have smaller and more decentralized stake pools, for example. So that's one. Then number two would be changes to the MEV architecture would obviously affect the economics of staking. like even today, the MEV revenue is a pretty significant portion of staking revenue